The year is 1982. The video game boom is booming and the home computer is becoming a reality. And kids everywhere are doing their best to convince their parents that they really need a home computer to do the family taxes and store food recipes and just possibly play an occasional game or two. Meanwhile, in the arcades, everyone is being chased by flat ghosts, jumping over flat barrels and trying to avoid flattening their frog even further while avoiding flat cars. Then all of a sudden there is a dazzling light in the two-dimensional darkness. It is Sega Saxon making its glorious entrance into the arcades. This game used a semi-3D technique called axonometric projection, and the particular type of projection used is called isometric. It wasn't the first game to use this technique, but it was certainly the one that made the biggest impact. The arcade visitors' minds were blown when they saw the game. And of course, this style of graphics quickly spread to the early home computers. One of these computers was the ZX Spectrum, where isometric games quickly became popular. So let's have a look at 10 different isometric games on the Spectrum. In no particular order at all, this is not a top 10 video. And a quick disclaimer before we start, Fairlight isn't included in this video. Why, I hear everyone scream? Well, I've already made a dedicated video about the game, where I interview its creator. Check the description for a link to satisfy your Fairlight needs.
Number 1.
Let's start at the very beginning, with Ant Attack, released in late '83. This is considered to be the very first isometric game for home computers. It's also supposedly the first video game to allow you to choose your gender, boy or girl. Once that is done, you need to enter the city of Ant Escher and rescue your lost other half. The city is teeming with angry ants that you can either stun by jumping on them, or blow up using grenades, or just try to avoid them altogether. Another unique mechanic of the game is that you can change between 4 different viewing angles. This is very helpful when buildings are blocking your view. Can't actually think of any other early isometric games that allowed you to do this. The game was very well received by the press and gamers alike, much thanks to its striking visuals, which looked outstanding at the time. It was nominated in the 1983 Golden Joystick Awards for Best Original Game of the Year, but lost to Imagine's Ad Idem's. The game was created and coded by Sandy White, at the time a 23-year-old sculptor from Edinburgh. The map layout and most of the graphics were created by his girlfriend at the time, Angela Sutherland. The two met in 1980 while at Edinburgh College of Art studying fine art sculpture. They co-founded Spaceman Limited and co-wrote Ant Attack, Zombie and Eye of the Mask. After that they seem to have gone separate ways, where Angela remained in the gaming industry while Sandy moved on.
Number 2.
If Ant Attack was the first isometric game, this one was the one that really changed the isometric landscape and truly popularized the format. And the game is of course Ultimate's Night Law, published in '84, and introducing their Filmation engine. Can't really make a video about isometric Spectrum games without mentioning this one. In the game you control Saberman, who has been bitten by the Saber Wolf and now transforms into a werewolf at nightfall. He have 40 days to search the wizard's castle for ingredients to create a potion to cure his curse. And an interesting detail about the enemies in the game is that some of them will only attack Saberman when he is in werewolf form. The graphics in the game were created by Carol Stamper and her husband Tim Stamper. They managed to create some amazingly cartoony visuals, even when faced with the limitations of the ZX Spectrum. The graphics blew the mind of both the gaming press and gamers at the time. And there is something very compelling about them, that just draws you in and pushes you to go and explore the 128 rooms in the castle. Unfortunately, the game suffers a bit from slowdown in places, due to the isometric graphics. Here you can see some sketches made by, I believe, Tim Stamper during the development of the game. Tim, together with his brother Chris, were the founders of Ultimate Play the Game. That later became Rare Limited, a company that still seems to be active today. But the Stamper brothers left in 2007.
Number 3.
This is probably the most gorgeous looking isometric game on the Specky, in my humble opinion at least. Batman, published by Ocean Software. In the game you unsurprisingly control Batman in his quest to rescue a kidnapped Robin. To achieve this he needs to collect all his wonderful toys and all 7 parts of the Batmobile that are spread out over the Batcave's 150 rooms. The developers of Batman should probably be described as the isometric dream team. Even though John Ritman and Bernie Drummond only ever developed 2 isometric Spectrum games together, this one and the seminal Head Over Heels. Both are considered timeless Spectrum classics. Ritman handled the coding and has admitted that Ultimate's Night Law was a big inspiration for him when creating Batman. It's also interesting to note that Ritman's isometric games ran a bit better than Ultimate's efforts. Drummond, who created the graphics, had a real knack for pushing pixels and knew how to make the very few pixels he had to work with dance. And the graphics truly look gorgeous and keep the player motivated to keep exploring. Sadly, Drummond passed away far too early in 2021.
Number 4.
Costa Panayi developed the next game, Highway Encounter, and his games were often different in the sense that they didn't involve any violence. But in this one we actually get to indulge in a little video game violence and kill some aliens and eventually blow up their mothership. To achieve this we are pushing a bomb down a highway assisted by 5 Voltrons, one of which are under your direct control and the remaining ones act as your extra lives. And they are also responsible for pushing the bomb forward. Costa often created his own graphics, and I believe this was the case in this one too. They really do look gorgeous, and even include some color. The game also runs very smoothly with minimal slowdown, which was often not the case with many other isometric games on the 8-bit home computers. He also made a couple of other isometric games on the Specky, Hate, Revolution and the budget game Collision Course, that he created under the pseudonym H. Seams. The game got an isometric sequel in '86, Alien Highway, which was quite similar to the first one. It wasn't quite as visually striking in my opinion. Costa doesn't seem to have been involved in the development of this one though.
Number 5.
In the very stylized and critically well-received movie, you control a private detective that needs to retrieve a vital audio tape from a mobster. The game uses an icon-based user interface, a bit like Psygnosis Barbarian 1, that allows you to move around rooms and streets, pick up items and even talk to people, even though the text parser is very limited and often returns very cryptic and random replies. And of course, should you run out of words, you can also punch and shoot people. The game was developed by a Croatian developer and designed by Dusko Dimitrijevic, who also worked on the coding together with Mario Mandic. The graphics were created by Dragan Angelkovic and have an amazing near Philip Marlowe film noir style that works very well in monochrome. They really immerse you in the game world and you can almost experience the smell of old cigarettes and cheap cologne as you explore your office and its surroundings. The game also gets increasingly surreal as you explore deeper, with bizarre enemies, mysterious levitating furniture, and rather peculiar room layouts. I have a feeling the devs were running out of time as the game was nearing its development deadline. And according to an interview, they only had 40 days to finish the game, and only 32 unused bytes were left in the release version. Angelkovic was also involved with a couple of other Spectrum games, like Kung Fu, Phantom Club and Play for Your Life. I did manage to find some footage of who I think is Angelkovic creating graphics for Kung Fu from a Belgrade television interview.
Nacrtano na ekran, vrlo neprecizno I tako, ali vrlo značajno za eksperimente, koliko faza. Sada jedan čovjek uzeo milimetarski papir I danima, oko 15 dana mu je to trebalo, dok je on sve te crteže kojih je bilo 30-ak.
Verujemo da vam je priče dovoljno. Ostaje vam samo da sednete za sto.
Check the link in the description if you want to watch the entire video. Other than that, I haven't found much information about him.
Number 6.
Time for Ultimate Play the game's second isometric release on the Spectrum, Alien 8. And just as with Nightlore, they use their Filmation engine. In the game, you control the Alien 8 Cybot that needs to care for the hibernating crew on a spaceship. It involves the usual platforming, solving soft puzzles and avoiding nasties, and just as in Nightlore, you have a time limit to contend with. Performance-wise, the game suffers from fairly severe slowdown at times. Even so, this was my favorite isometric ultimate game, thanks to the somewhat more engaging gameplay compared to the others. Also really enjoy the space theme. The game has about 130 screens, so roughly the same map size as its predecessor Nightlore, and the layout of the rooms roughly resembles the shape of a spaceship. This time it looks like Tim Stamper was solely responsible for the graphics. His wife Carol seemingly wasn't involved with this one. The space-themed graphics works great and, just as in Nightlore, creates a very inviting and charming atmosphere. Here you can see another sketch by presumably Tim, showing off the Cybot design.
Number 7.
Nosferatu The Vampyre is officially licensed from the 1979 Werner Herzog film with the same name, starring Klaus Kinski and Isabelle Adjani. In the game you control various characters from the film and need to deal with Nosferatu and save the town of Wismar from his bloodthirst. The game also has in-game beeper music, and let me relieve you of your pain by informing you that yes, it can be turned off. A true blessing for your ears and soul. The focus of the game is exploration and locating useful items. In fact, you can only jump when correctly positioned in front of certain objects. The enemies in the game seems to mostly have random movement patterns, which makes it rather frustrating getting past them without taking damage. But there are items you can find that deals with them. The game has big and detailed graphics that looks great. The rooms are rather nicely decorated, but there's a lot of reused visuals throughout, and Nosferatu seems to be a big proponent of installing a rather excessive amount of bathtubs and toilets in his castle. The creator of the game, Graham Stafford, mentioned in an interview that he had a hard time fitting everything into specky memory, so this might be why we see a lot of reused assets. I believe Stafford was also responsible for the graphics, as far as I can tell anyway.
Number 8.
Sweevo's World is another isometric game that focuses on finding and using items, instead of platforming. In fact, you can't jump at all in this one. Instead you need to make use of lifts and air vents to become airborne. In the game you control a dim-witted robot called Sweevo, and the manual is somewhat cryptic about what you need to do. But there's plenty of puzzles about, so who needs a manual anyway? The game world consists of 4 different interconnected floors, and you can choose to start on any of them. The game's whimsical atmosphere and humorous touches, with graphics to match, makes it fun to explore. The few moving enemies that are present include the horrid little girl, complete with a bouncy ponytail, and the Great Dictator, featuring an eerily familiar mustache. The other adversaries are all pretty much static, and includes fearsome fruits that are best avoided if you care for your life and GI levels. But even with the relatively low enemy count, I remember being a bit frustrated when playing this as a kid. The game would quite happily softlock me in certain situations and cheaply kill me in others, often by having static enemies popping out of the floor without warning. I believe the graphics were created by Greg Follis, since he was usually the one responsible for the visuals in the Gargoyle games, and Roy Carter would handle the coding. Follis also created the graphics for their next isometric game, Hydrofool, released in '87. He seems to have been working for Gargoyle games up until '87, but it's unclear what he has been up to since.
Number 9.
Firebird's Rasputin doesn't actually use isometric projection, instead it's called oblique projection. In the game you control a knight that needs to deal with the mad monk Rasputin. You need to find various runes that are combined into spells to help you defeat him. It involves a lot of frustrating platforming and avoiding a lot of fast nasties. This, in combination with the tank controls, make this game hard as titanium balls. It's also often very hard to see what's going on because there's a lot of platforms and nasties in the way. There's both a 48 and 128K version of this one. The gameplay you are seeing here is from the 128K version.
I am Rasputin. Beware.
It has a bigger map, sample speech, in-game music, and is also apparently easier than the 48K version. Couldn't get that version running though, so can't really verify that. The game was written and programmed by Paul Hibbard, and I'm pretty sure he was also responsible for the graphics, except the loading screen. The visuals are really gorgeous and creates a pretty surreal atmosphere that invites exploration. And I'm pretty sure Firebird knew they were onto something special with the visuals here, since they produced a TV spot for the game in '86.
Rasputin from Firebird. Every software house is jumping on the 3D isometric graphic bandwagon, but none have been able to produce multi-action screens. Until now. The playability and beautifully recreated playing area will make you come back time and time again to Rasputin, one of Firebird's new hot range.
Hibbert seems to have only worked on one other Spectrum game, but he continued working in the gaming industry up until at least 2003. After that, it's unclear what he's been up to.
Number 10.
The last game is a bit different in the sense that it's focusing purely on arcade action and high scores. In it you need to destroy an antimatter converter before it reaches critical mass, i.e. you have a time limit. And you do this by flying your hovercraft to the right while avoiding enemies and obstacles. And the game can be finished in a couple of minutes, if you know what you're doing. It's a bit unclear who made the graphics for this one. Could have been created by the coder Simon Francis. However, in an interview in Your Computer, he also credits Dave Cummings. And his name can also be found on an early loading screen, seen here on the back cover of the Spanish Urbe release. So it's not entirely unlikely that Cummings made the graphics for this one, or at least the loading screen. The graphics are rather sparse, but looks really nice. And there's this really neat touch when your hovercraft gets destroyed. It explodes into tiny bouncing pixels and you then have to use a jetpack to find another vehicle, while being attacked by hungry sandworms. Pretty cool for the time. There is some slowdown in the game and the controls are also a bit unresponsive at times. But overall, a pretty neat little game that does get a bit repetitive once you've finished it. And with that we've reached the end, but before you go, I would like to encourage you to consider supporting me on Patreon or Ko-fi. This will allow me to make more videos like this one because, trust me, they do take a lot longer to make than you think. Just $1 a month would be much appreciated, so please consider it. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video and hope to catch you in the next one. Cheers!